Blessings and welcome to worship here at St. Paul Congregational United Church of Christ in Oskaloosa, Iowa. We are an open and affirming congregation, and we say no matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are always welcome here with us, so you never have to check a piece of yourself at the door. Friends, we worship here at 501 High Avenue East every Sunday morning at 10 a.m., and we invite you to come and worship here in person with us. Today is the first Sunday in Lent, and we begin near the beginning of our sacred text in the book of Genesis. We hear a familiar story of a flood that devastated the earth and what came after that flood. We'll get to our discussion of that in just a moment, but for now, I invite you to create a comfortable space around you as you begin this time of worship. Clear any clutter that needs to be cleared. Turn off any ringers that need to be turned off. Set aside the newspaper and just take a moment to be in community with those who are also watching this and with the divine. Let us center ourselves now with a deep centering breath together. Friends, welcome to worship. Friends, let us share the peace of Christ and words of namaste with those we are watching this with this morning. And if you're watching this by yourself, share that peace, those words with me. And I promise when you say, Pastor, peace be with you, I will always respond, peace also with you. Let us share the peace of Christ with one another.
A reading from the book of Genesis, chapter 9, verses 8 through 17. Hear what the Spirit is saying to you. Then God said to Noah and to his sons with him, As for me, I am establishing my covenant with you and your descendants after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the domestic animals, and every animal of the earth with you, as many of them come out of the ark. I establish my covenant with you that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of a flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. God said, This is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all future generations. I have set my bow in the clouds, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring clouds over the earth, and the bow is seen by the clouds, in the clouds, I will remember my covenant that is between me and you and every living creature of the flesh. And all waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the bow is in the clouds, I will see it, and remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of the flesh that is on the earth. God said to Noah, This is the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and all the flesh that is on the earth. Here ends the reading that offers us insight on God. May God grant us wisdom and courage for interpretation.
This is not the only flood story that arose from this time period or this part of the world. There were stories that rose up from various groups of people and various faith perspectives found in the region once known as Mesopotamia. Not to mention flood stories that sprang up from Greek philosophy as well. Some scholars believe that such stories, including this one from the ancestors of our faith, stem from a flood that is believed to have occurred somewhere in the region of the Black Sea at a time when that small region of the world was understood by its inhabitants to be the entire world. In the face of their entire world being destroyed, those left to pick up the pieces began trying to make sense of all the terrible that had happened. So flood stories like these emerged, each from a unique perspective. Some with many gods in conversation with other gods, and some like this one, with one god caught in an internal struggle about what to do in response to the state of the world. In the stories from Mesopotamia, some gods want to destroy humanity due to overpopulation and too much noise, while others try to talk those gods out of destruction at all. In this story, God is grieved over the corruption of humans, and after what we assume is much internal angst, decides to destroy the earth and cut off all human flesh, regardless of the setup, though. The outcome was the same. Life as they knew it had been destroyed. People were dead. Creation had been submerged, and God, the stories seem to say, was the cause. I say it that way because I am reminded of all the times and all the ways that we human beings put our very human reading of the events around us onto God. There's no reason we should expect that the generations of antiquity, the generations from which we came, would have been any different. And this is especially true in the face of violent and traumatic acts that are beyond the pale. We've heard it before. Hurricane Katrina was the result of the sexual and gluttonous sins that New Orleans is famous for. AIDS was God's answer to the homosexual problem. Black women were experimented on surgically without anesthesia precisely because God had seen fit to create them to feel no pain. Palestinians were killed and dispossessed during the Nakba because God was accomplishing something special through the return of the Jews to their ancestral homeland. The world was destroyed by a flood sent by God because the people had been bad enough to deserve it. Instead of condemning the violence and naming the trauma, somersaults have been done throughout history in order to find a way to believe that the victims of both natural and human engineered disasters somehow deserved it. That there was a grand plan to all the damage and the violence and the death that allowed a select few to float to the surface unscathed while the rest of us perished. That there was some moral flaw that God saw in the deceased that ultimately led to their demise. Imagine believing that genocide was somehow justifiable simply because someone said that God had done it. Even if we haven't subscribed to that exact brand of cause and effect thinking, we do, I think, find ourselves from time to time walking dangerously close to the ledge of such ideology, because we too are trying to make sense of the world around us. We too are trying to make sense of our pain and our oppression, and if God is not the orchestrator of it all, then we are left with no answers for why things are the way they are. There are no answers for why people die in their prime of a disease that others survive. There are no answers for why tornadoes drop down on one farmhouse and leave those around it completely unscathed. There are no answers for why some are able to carry several pregnancies to term, while others have yet to have a single pregnancy end in anything but miscarriage and heartache. There are seemingly no answers for how or why we got here, right where we are educationally, politically, or relationally in the state of Iowa. So we look in other places for reasons and explanations, moving from God as the problem to the images of God with whom we share space. We may not be a people entirely sure what to make of it when the world around us comes undone, but we are sure that finding out who is to blame, who is responsible, will help. According to Brené Brown, this is not uncommon. She writes that blaming is essentially unleashing our anger, pain, and discomfort onto whatever we can find to make us feel more in control, when in reality, that's the opposite of what happens. Instead of gaining control, we are losing the ability to have happy, healthy, and empathetic relationships. See, when we are blaming and finger-pointing, we get defensive, and we miss the opportunity to look honestly and gently at ourselves, to see what, if any, role we played in events and how we might be able to learn and grow from it. And we miss the opportunity and we miss out on the possibility of having an honest, open, and empathetic conversation to hold people accountable for their actions and ask for change, which, according to Brown, takes a lot more grit, courage, and self-awareness than raging, attacking, and fault-finding. In other words, the very moment that we place blame, we undermine our ability to create change, both within and without. Which means is that if we want something different than the world as it is around us, or the world as it is within us, our starting point cannot be blame. It cannot be discharging our anger, our pain, or our discomfort on the people and places in our immediate vicinity. It cannot be further divisions and more barriers. It cannot be the kind of call-out culture that is so popular on the left, or the spirit of judgment that is falsely flaunted as being faithful to God on the right. Our starting point cannot be the flood and its devastation. It must be what came after. It must be the rainbow. Science tells us rainbows don't happen without change. That it is light hitting the spherical drop of water, being reflected, refracted, and dispersed that causes this phenomenon to occur. Faith, I think, tells us much the same thing. Faith tells us that wherever the deluge of social divisions are met by the light of love, and wherever the levees of our own internal barriers are breached by the glow of compassion, something beautiful occurs. That love and that compassion are, in a very real way, reflected, refracted, and dispersed beyond the confines of our understanding, beyond the limitations of war, beyond our devastating willingness to accept the destruction of people, animals, and nature as mere collateral damage incurred in the name of progress, beyond our tendency to see those we oppose and those who oppose us as less than human. I'm not suggesting that the universal love and care that we are called toward in this text will finally help us understand why painful or unjust things happen, or will make accepting the devastation that we meet in our everyday lives any easier. Some circles cannot at the last be squared. But I am suggesting that in starting someplace new, someplace other than blame and the quick discharge of our pain, our anger, and our discomfort, we might find our way to someplace new as well. You know, this time of year especially, everyone loves that quote from Martin Luther King Jr. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. But we always seem to forget the part that comes next. The part that says we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Getting someplace new ourselves means helping others get someplace new too. It isn't a one-time thing. It is an ongoing covenant of universal care in which we choose daily to participate, in which we choose to reflect, refract, and disperse the light that once found us in our own storm. All in the hopes that in so doing, those same vibrant rainbow hues would find their way to those around us, still weathering storms of their own. This Lent, may we become a people who reflect, refract, and disperse the light of love to even the most discriminating and hate-filled places. Amen. My friends, we get to choose daily, moment to moment, how or if we will participate in God's covenant with all creation, that never again will anything destroy us all completely. God's covenant of unencumbered, unfailing love and universal care is our covenant too. So go now. Be a people of covenant. Choose love. Live love. Be love. And shine that love in all of its glorious, colorful splendor in places still trapped in darkness. The darkness of hate and discrimination. Amen and amen.